So it's August, which means Summer Under the Stars, the best time of the year. Um, and this year we kicked it off with Marilyn Monroe, who is one of my favorite actresses. I've seen about two-thirds of her films, I think, most of her lead roles, but a lot of what I'm missing is her early films and a handful of her like late 50s films that I just haven't caught yet. So today I watched two of her early films. The first one was 1949's Ladies of the Chorus, and this was one of her first sort of starring roles. It's very much a B picture. It's for Columbia, and it has Marilyn as the lead, like her name, and then the title of the film. She, obviously, is a lady of the chorus. Her mother, played by Adele Jurgens, is also a lady of the chorus. The thing is, they are in the same chorus. And eventually, a man falls in love with Marilyn's character after she becomes from the chorus girl to lead. Um, and the way that happens is quite fun with a lot of catfighting and shenanigans. Um, where am I going with this? Okay, so the man then asks for her hand in marriage, and her mother's like, women should, or ladies of the chorus should not marry society men. It does not work out. And the rest of the film is sort of her telling her story of how it didn't work out for her and us finding out whether it will work out for Marilyn's Peggy. So the film's fascinating in that originally the film, Marilyn, no one in it was a star. Then Marilyn started to become a star, so then they re-released it, and most of the marketing that you see has her name all huge. And it's one of those sort of interesting stories of how Hollywood used to operate. Like nowadays, if you have somebody in a B movie that went straight to VOD or whatever, and then 2 years later they're an Oscar nominee, like that movie doesn't just resurge. Like fans will find it, but like studios don't own stars anymore. So this whole idea of like having a movie with a star in it who becomes a star 2 years later, and then let's just re-release it, like that's just not something that happens anymore. So that's always fascinating. But it's hard to watch this film and not think of Marilyn as a star, like because Marilyn is a star, and especially if you love her later films where she really is Marilyn as we know her. It's hard to watch this and see this sort of ingenue and this pre-star Marilyn that she was. But you also see how she became who she became because she's so much better than everyone else involved. Even though she's not great because the film's not great, she's so much better than everyone else involved. It's amazing. So this was Ladies of the Chorus. It's definitely uh, like an artifact of its time and of note for anyone who loves Marilyn and is interested in watching her progress as an artist. The next film I watched, surprisingly, is from 2 years later. This is 1951's Love Nest. Marilyn was not the star in this film. She, when this film was marketed, especially on home video, in like every home video, is her face front and center. She is a very supporting character in this movie. She's like barely in this film, yet so much of the marketing is about her. It's crazy. There's some great. The marketing's great though because it's all her in her woman Army Corps uniform, and like that's fantastic. This is based on a novel called The Reluctant Landlord. They renamed it Love Nest and tried to make it very salacious, even though the film is not salacious whatsoever. It's about a man who's returned home from the war only to discover that his wife has used his war money to buy a dilapidated building and decided they're going to make money as landlords. And obviously, shenanigans ensue as the house or the building is falling apart. What's wonderful is that even though the man is sort of like, oh, what did you do? You never once feel that the woman is being demeaned for this decision. Like she had business reasons for why she did what she did, and it's taking a little more time to get it up and running than she had thought. but she's never painted as like a ditz for buying this or for making making a mistake. The film was actually written by I.A.L. Diamond, as we all know. He wrote several films with Billy Wilder, including The Apartment. So you can see a lot of his characterisms in this. The movie doesn't ever quite gel, but it's full of really interesting pieces. And apparently it was not well received really at the time because it felt old fashioned, because it was this sort of post war returning home movie that was very popular in the late 40s. But by the time you get to 1950, 51, people are already trying to move past the war and trying to, like, either you've got straight up war movies or you don't talk about the war anymore. And so being this post-war coming home thing and not being like a drama like The Best Years of Our Lives or something is sort of strange. And it feels sort of like there's a whole lot of these coming home movies like Suddenly It's Spring and stuff like that that were like late 40s and felt like it made sense. But in 1951, you're already starting to shift into a whole different form of Hollywood, and this really doesn't feel like it should be a 50s film. It really feels like a late 40s film. I do love any movie that includes a mention of the Woman Army Corps. I feel like the Woman Army Corps was brought up a lot in these post-war films, and then in every war film post 1960, practically, it's like the Woman Army Corps didn't exist. And you never see it in World War II movies anymore. And I'm like, okay, well, there were a lot of women in the Women Army Corps, and they're veterans too. So let's just talk about that. This movie also stars June Haver and William Lundigan, as well as being the last film of Leatrice Joy. She was a silent film star, very long career, and also the last film of Jack Parr before he one of the last films of Jack Parr before he transitioned into mostly being on TV. There's a lot going on in this movie, a lot of shenanigans, a lot of people getting in misunderstandings. There's a cat that keeps popping up. The cat's name, oh my god, the cat's name was like Bubbles, or no, Bubbles was the woman from the Ladies of the Chorus. I can't remember the cat's name. The cat had a fun name. It's just sort of a fun apartment movie. And there's a lot of those movies as well that are like apartment and or neighbor movies that were very popular at this time and moving in from the 30s and 40s. And I feel like that's another sort of this like neighborhood apartment movie is not really something that we do much anymore. I guess because we all moved out to the suburbs in the 50s. I don't know. Not everyone moved out to the suburbs, so we should still have apartment building movies. Let's bring that back. Yeah. Okay, so this is 1951's Love Nest. Love Nest was directed by Joseph Newman, and Ladies of the Chorus was directed by Phil Carlson. They're both on Watch TCM. You can watch them until next Monday. Most of these have been available on home video in various Marilyn Monroe collections, and they're they're both interesting artifacts of their time. And they're definitely of interest for anyone who loves Marilyn and is interested in seeing the growth of her career from a supporting player to the blonde bombshell we all know and love, great comedian, Ms. Marilyn Monroe.